Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I'm here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, taking a topic, deep diving, having a good time while doing it. Um, let's take or get the housekeeping out of the way. If you guys are not getting my emails, go to masterchimletter.com, sign up. You get one of my programs for free just for doing that. I write an email every day, sometimes more than once a day. And every single day, there's a quote of the day, letting you know where my head is, what I'm thinking about. And I could usually get a little bit more aggressive in my communications and my transparency, maybe. I'm not going to say authenticity because I still see myself as being authentic now, but I'm going to say I am more transparent in my views via email. So we can get into the weeds on the email in a way that we can't on these platforms because of the game we have to play. All right, what's going on? All right, let's see who's. I see some comments. Erin, what's up, darling? She says, hello to you, MC. Looking forward to the show. And also the quote at the bottom of your email today is absolutely epic. For those of you who don't know, there's nothing wrong with acting like a woman, assuming you are one, of course. You know, it's funny. I put that email. It was something that actually came up in a conversation with one of my coaching clients a couple of days ago, where he asked me if I was anti-women. And I'm like, you mean like gay? And he's like, no, I don't mean gay. And obviously, I'm fucking around with him. And that quote was born out of that conversation. So the quote of the day is usually just a little, I guess whatever a quote of the day does, but obviously the context and perspective being my own. So you get that extra angle. Jamie, what's up, brother, man? Good to see you. Got my two operatives up in Canada. See a bunch of you other guys watching. Always feel free to say what's up. I love seeing the faces, seeing who's here from week to week. I'll tell you, today is Warrior Stream 190. So I've been doing these for a while, at least 190 weeks, I guess, right? But those of you that have been watching me for a lot longer than that, I've done hundreds of episodes of the Pressure Project, hundreds of episodes of the Pressure Project Radio, and then I did the Pressure Master podcast. A lot of pressure, right? A lot of pressure. But this has been going on for 190. The reason I'm bringing that up is you never know when these are gonna end, and I had a conversation with a couple of allies of mine recently, and I reminded them of that point, that observation in the context of our relationship, where it's like, this is like we're always on an arc, and ARC, right? Not ARK, right? ARC, and we don't know when it's going to end. So I'm somebody who believes very strongly in having a philosophy of gratitude, and that needs to be applied even to something as seemingly trivial, as this. I'm the one who's hosting this, and I get a kick out of doing these. I really enjoy it. Most of the people that are watching these, have, like, not everybody who watches these gives me money, buys my stuff, but they still participate in some way. And that adds to the energy of what it is that I'm doing with my life in a way that I think also benefits them. And we just don't want to take that for granted. I don't know why I felt like going on that little diatribe there for a sec, but just reminded of it. Jamie says, You're gonna get us arrested someday for words like that, MC. I need to start having like country-based filters, so only certain words get beeped in certain countries. All right. Oh, that's funny. John Wiley, what's up, brother, man? Good to see you. My man. All right. So good topic prepared for today. Today we're talking about being right isn't enough. I was prompted to have this topic be the topic of the day because recently I had a I'll say a conversation. I'm taking some creative license to some extent, but let's just say a conversation with a an ally, and he had a very very moral position that he really wanted to share, and he found some inconsistencies in the way people were acting. He found a position that could explain it. He sort of like discovered a formula that could explain this phenomenon of hypocrisy and inconsistency that he observed in other people. I'm staying vague on purpose because it's really, the bigger stuff that I want to focus on. But he had a very, very strong take on the morals as displayed by people's consistency in how they exclaimed or what they pronounced themselves to represent and what they demonstrated themselves as actually representing. If you look at, the word represent, repetitive, present, to represent something is to constantly be presenting that thing. Some people will say something, but they won't do it. So instead of representing it, they're restating it, I guess you could say, And there's obviously a difference between those two things. And I think when it comes to morality, right? Let's get back into this guy's situation. When it comes to morality, yeah, like you don't got to do a lot of work to realize that people say one thing and do something else. It's not that there's no value in that observation, but it really leads to the impetus for today's talk, where it's like, okay. And yeah, these guys, they're full of shit. They don't just, okay. All right. I agree. So what's the thing that we're supposed to do with this information now? And I think a lot of it is connected to, I admittedly, I have an approach to life that's movement based, that's action based, that I don't like complaining. I don't like gossiping. I don't like, and when I say I don't like it, I don't mean that it's not a preference of mine, but I also think there's weakness in it. I think there's self-destructive, habits that are formed of those types of behaviors. And we shouldn't be looking at life as something to just watch other people do. We got our own shit to do. So all that being said, my phrase to the individual is, being right isn't enough. That's topic of today's talk, but it's also the position that I shared. And I wanted to get into I got my list prepared for the answer, right? Because even if I'm criticizing him, if I ended there, it's like, well, what fucking value did I add to anything? What movement did I, demonstrate, let alone, inspire in other people? And I created a list, and the list is, let me bring it up. I have the 7 laws of effective action, right? So I'm sitting here thinking about the criticism I have for this guy, and I don't want to, I'm criticizing the guy. There were some things that were inconsistent in his own thing, but it's really, I would say maybe the limitation of his position, right? And a lot of times when people start talking about morality, it's often, look at how immoral these people actually are due to their inconsistencies and how they act. And there needn't even be like a sort of religious undertone to any of this. It's just an observation of inconsistency. It's, they're saying one thing, but they're doing something else. And that always ends with, and that's why they should follow my morality. That I'm not going to say always, but more often than not, it's usually their morality is terrible. This is why mine is better. And I don't think that there's a lot of utility in that either. I think morality is something that is as individual as we are. And this is going to rub some people the wrong way. This is despite what your documents say, right? What your writings say. And you could say that there's a morality that exists out there universally. All I'm saying is I don't think it has much to do with how we live our lives. And I think it has a lot less to do, in my opinion, with the way our lives are led than yours. I think that you think this thing plays a bigger role than it does. And I think when you look at history, you look at just the world as it stands right now, you look at the mechanics and dynamics of people interacting with one another. I don't think you find any of those documents anywhere in that, not observably independent of being handed the document, right? Sure, you can give me the document after the fact, but it's like, here's this document. This is universally true. I want to be able to look and observe that. And I don't think that that's the case. But I think if we go back a step, right, and we scale it up a little bit more generally, I do think that you could see some things that are consistent. But it's just, it's got to be able to accommodate the differentiation between one individual and another, right? So I designed these 7 laws of effective action to sort of get after what I think an individual should be doing when it comes to actually getting something done, in the real world. Got a comment here. Aaron writes, we've actually been watching for quite a while back when you and Pat did the shows together. Yeah, that's 2014, over 10 years ago. Right on. And she added context. Very good, Aaron, because sometimes I don't remember. Right. So let's get into this list. Right. So the 7 laws of effective action, and we're going to go from 1 up till 7. There is, so I'm not going to say there's gravity, meaning one's more important than the other, but I did put them in this sort of linear, design on purpose, right? So this order on purpose. So let's get into it. I got my notes here, and I just clicked the note and thought that it was going to affect the screen, which makes absolutely no sense, right? So let's get into law number 1. These are the 7 laws of effective action. Law number 1, action must fit the terrain. Every environment that we're in has its own rules. We know that. We know that the way you act when you're in the fancy part of town is different from the way you act when you're in the hood. Daytime rules, nighttime rules, they change. Every action that you take, your approach to making something happen, remember, these are the 7 laws of effective action. It must reflect the surrounding that you're in. Any action that ignores the structure and the environment that it's operating in eventually is going to fail. And it doesn't matter how valid or correct the position behind it is. There's so many people, you look at the fat lesbian that got shot by the cops. She thought she was right. You don't win reality by arguing with it. You win by understanding it. If there is a point where that woman was effectively designing a strategy to produce the outcome that she wanted, I can't think that that would have led her to what ultimately got her shot and killed. So I do think that she didn't make the accommodations for the situation that she was in. So law number 1, action must fit the terrain. Every environment has rules. You could drive your car all you want. If there's a cop in front of you with his gun pointed at you, suddenly that rule has changed. And if you're not aware of that, I'm not going to say good, bad. I don't even have to. All I have to say is not effective action. All right. So that's law number 1. Let's get into law number 2. I'm going to ask you guys something before we get into law number 2. This list, the laws of effective action, I was flirting with doing this, and I want you to tell me what you think. While I'm going through these laws, should I have that running on the bottom or not? Let me know. Say yes or no. Yes, I should have that banner going along the bottom. If you're watching on mobile, I think it's up top here. But if you're watching on a desktop, or I think some tablets, it's down here. Yes or no on the banner. It'll stay there while I'm doing this. I think it brings a little more clarity to the context of this list that I'm going over, but I could be wrong. I'm going to leave it there for now. You guys, let me know what you think. All right. Jamie says no. Jamie says no. All right, a couple of more, you guys. We got a bunch of guys watching now. It says it's on top of our TV, makes the video smaller since you're also in portrait mode there. All right. A bunch of other you guys watching. Like, all right, if you're driving, like don't crash. But I'm gonna leave it here for now, and we'll see. Right. So let's get into. Now I'm gonna take it down. What are you gonna do? I don't get paid for this. You guys will be all right. All right. Let's get to number 2. Number 2, action must create leverage. Action must create leverage. The truth alone doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. If an action doesn't force a response, it's going to be ignored. Leverage is the thing that is created by movement. It's fine if you believe in something. It's fine if you have the energy to want to enact some sort of change. But you have to turn that belief into some form of impact, right? In my meta model, it's also in the manifesto, when I talk about real power that an individual has, real power is the external power. It's the ability that an individual has to make the world respond. Without leverage, that doesn't happen. So action must create leverage. If it doesn't create leverage, then it's never going to produce the outcome that maybe the impetus for the action happened to be from the beginning, right? So number 2, or law number 2, action must create leverage. All right. David says, yes, banner scrolling. Yarn Saxa, what's up, Donald? Good to see you. All right, I'm going to put the banner up again so people who are watching now could let me know. You guys let me know, if you can, in the comments, whether or not I should have that banner going. I'm going to leave it up for now. So we went over law number 2, action must create leverage. Let's get to law number 3. Little bit of overlap here, but I felt it worth articulating on its own nonetheless. Law number 3, action must produce results. Intentions do not change outcomes. If nothing's different after the action was symbolic. It was cathartic. It was probably a waste of resources, the most valuable of which is time, right? Actions have to produce results. Reality is only going to respond to those things that change behavior, change incentives, change control. What do I mean by that? If you do something and nothing changes, that is telling you the sum total value of what it is that you did. Which means if you can't observe a change, then you have to ask yourself, well, what is it that changed? And if you're not changing the outside, you're probably changing something internal. Action must produce results. So if you take action and it's not producing the external outcome, chances are it did something internally that you're probably not attributing it to, right? You're not looking at it through that lens. You're not saying, well, I did this to feel better. It's the parent who's in a bad mood and their kid didn't do something and they slap the kid, where there have been other times where the kid has done that same thing and they weren't slapped. So somehow there was an escalation for some reason. Why? It's because of some sort of internal pressure. So that escalation of action was really cathartic. It wasn't producing an outcome, right? It wasn't producing an external result, right? So law number 3, action must produce results. Aaron says scrolling banner is distracting. Man. See, I don't know if I should weigh your vote completely, though, Aaron. And it's not because you're a woman. It's not because you're Canadian. It's because you're married to Jamie. Right? So I think you guys maybe should get 1.5 votes. So, oh, that still makes it 1.5 to 1, though. So you don't have to argue that. I'm arguing it for you. All right. So what we'll do is maybe we'll just keep taking it off and putting it on. I don't fucking know. We'll figure it out. But let's get on to the next law. All right, where are we? So number 3 is action must produce results. Let's get to number 4. This is a good one. Action must outlast attention. I just talked about the mother, being in a bad mood and slapping her kid over an infraction that didn't get the kid slapped last time. Emotions fade. If you want an outcome, you can't rely on emotion. That's why, I've said it before, but a lot wiser people than me have said you can't build a life on motivation. But the alternative is structure. The alternative is you put the things in position so that when your emotion is on its normal roller coaster, the dynamic or the delta between the two of them is different from person to person. But while it's doing that, at whatever level of delta it's doing it, having a structure gets things done. Right? There's been a bunch of people in my life that I told they should get married to their girlfriends. A bunch of guys. I never told a girl to get married to their girlfriend, but a bunch of guys that I've said to get married. And one of the reasons is this. It is, the structure is what remains. Emotion is not something that you could fuel a long-term mission on. If an action only works while people are fired up or while people are observing, it winds up just being temporary. I'm not saying anything you don't know here, but what's going to last long term, what you can rely on, is what is built into the structures, the systems, the rules, the incentives. There's in business, one of the things that we could do is we raise prices, right? And it's commonly thought that all business consultants, of which I consider myself one, all we do is tell you to raise your prices. Well, it's just that most people that first, especially for the people that first use a business consultant, they decide for the first time to invest in somebody else to put their expert eyes, on their business. Those are usually the people that their prices aren't high enough, right? But the thing about prices is if you raise a price, it has such a different effect on obviously the economics of the business, but also the momentum of the business, the trajectory of a business. If we're looking to have 100 people pay us $1, it's a different operation. It's a different life than having 2 people pay us $50 or 1 person pay us $100. Right? Worst number of business is 1, so I wouldn't do that. But 2 people paying us 50, it's a different business model. So everything changes. So if we create these structures, we want to change, we don't just want to be fired up and hope that some people like the dollar people act the same way that the $50 people do, because we're going to invest all this energy into making sure that they do so. It's just, no, it's a bad plan, because eventually you're going to run out of energy. Right? So the enthusiasm that we have that really is often measured and observed in willpower, that'll get us going, but it's not going to keep us going. Right? I've used the analogy, I think it was last week. I got one of these, the sweat tent, right? One of these portable saunas. They're fucking awesome, by the way. And I use 2 types of wood to fuel a session. The first one I use is they call it the fat wood, and it's like that high resin, fire starter type wood. And it's little strips, and you put 3 or 4 of those in. But then you put like the dried hardwood that burns longer, that's usually a little bit thicker, that'll sustain, the session in its entirety. Well, emotion is that fire starter, but at some point you're going to need a structure. So the action must outlast attention if you're actually trying to produce an outcome, right? So if you want to be effective, then that's what you got to do. So number 4, action must outlast attention. So Yarn Saxa says, I like the banner. Man, why did I have to bring this shit up? Right? We'll figure it out, folks. We'll figure it out. But all right, let me get to the next one. Where am I at here? All right, we're on law 5, right? So there's 7 laws. There's 7 laws. Right? You can see it here. As observed in this temporary banner, there are 7 laws of effective action, right? Let's take that off. So we're up to number 5. So law number 5, action must build strength over time. Now, this gets a little bit more into some of my, my models for improvement, that I share with my coaching students. But a good strategy is not only going to get you to where you want, but it also compounds. If every single time you do something, it leaves you weaker, then you're approaching failure. Because at some point, you're going to run out. Effective action, because these are the laws of effective action, right? Effective action should always make the next move easier, not more difficult. So if you're taking an action and you can no longer do it again, or you find yourself less than, then understand the limitation of the action. I'll use the analogy of lifting weights. If you're lifting weights, you're getting stronger. You're going to feel the weight when you're lifting it. There's going to be an adaptation process, countering or responding to the stimulation that bearing that weight during the workout did to you. But ultimately, the adaptation leaves you better off than before you began. And that's how strength accumulates over time. Similarly, when we're taking action and we want to be effective, right? We pride ourselves on being somebody who's an effective actor, right? An effective implementer, somebody who gets things done, a high performer, however you want to label it. We have to have embedded in that, following this law, the ability for that action to build strength over time. It has to make us better. If somebody tells me, in the business, hey, I have 100 people, give me $1 a month. And I say, well, let's raise the price to 2. Maybe he only had, maybe 40 people leave. He had 100 people giving him $1. 40 people left. He's only got 60 people now. And he goes, oh, I lost 40% of my business. No, you didn't. You raised your gross $20, 20% increase. And that sort of relative perspective that we can maintain when we're on the outside looking in, right? That meta perspective. That's the thing that tells us, okay, that move was actually better because it put us in a position. Not only do we have fewer people to service, but we also have more money now to service them, which raises the quality of your service, which gets more people to do it. So now when you get, when you're back up to 100 people, you've managed to double your income. Still dealing with 100 people, but now you have twice the budget to do it with, right? So effective action builds strength over time. All right. Let's get to law number 6. Action must work without agreement. All right, this could, I can go down different paths with this and it can get more controversial, but I'm going to keep it just middle of the road enough to not get into that. Reality does not require consensus. If an action only works when people are agreeing with you, it's a fragile action. It is a vulnerable action. It's certainly not going to be over time an effective action. It's what works despite people agreeing. That is what actually matters, is actually effective, is how we want to look at the outcomes we're producing. There's a great quote from Henry Ford where he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, which means to allow people to agree with you before you move forward is to give them a seat at the table of your life. So it's what they think is right. It's what you think is right. And none of that really considers the only thing that matters, which is what reality thinks is right or what reality thinks is going to work. So, number 6, action must work without agreement. If you know that you're supposed to do something in order to be effective, then you should do it. Yeah, but I don't think this guy wants me to. Well, either it's effective or it's not. If you're saying because of these considerations from other people that you shouldn't do it, then don't do it. But then I would argue that then it's not an effective action. But if you're saying it is something you should do, and you're just, ranting on cathartically about all the people that are going to disagree, like, that's just a waste of energy. It's just a waste of energy. The only thing you have to worry about when it comes to doing things that you know are going to be effective and on mission that piss other people off, the only thing you need to worry about are those people leaving. But what you don't see at the time are usually those people are anchors, right? I just put an image on, I made a meme, I put it on Instagram and Facebook of the claymation version of me pulling a bunch of chains, right? And the chain said haters, expectations of others, and all these things that people tend to drag around with them. I could have put approval, fear. I think fear of failure was another one of them. The whole thing is, these are things that ultimately, once they're discarded, it is liberating. It's like that girlfriend you broke up with that you didn't want to break up with, or the girlfriend that broke up with you that you didn't want her to break up with you. But then after the fact, you realize, holy shit, I can't believe that I was in that relationship. Like, how did I stay in that relationship for so long? Because when you're in it, you're looking at just loss in the form of change, in the form of uncertainty. But you're not taking a meta perspective and actually weighing its value, right? Its objective value. And that's the thing with this law. We have to build a relationship with moving, with acting, with being effective that doesn't rely on the consensus of people who may not be qualified to have an opinion in the first place, right? So law number 6, action must work without agreement. All right, so we got the final law here, and law number 7. Let's go over the first ones, right? And I will put the banner on while I do so, right? So far in the 7 laws of effective action, we went over law 1. Action must fit the terrain. Law 2. Action must create leverage. Law 3. Action must produce results. Law 4. Action must outlast attention. Law 5. Action must build strength over time. Law 6. Action must work without agreement. And let's get to law number 7. Action must change what happens next. If tomorrow looks the same as yesterday, being right meant absolutely nothing. Outcomes are the only things that determine value. If you're somebody that talks about all the things that are wrong with the world, it's like you're just like a broken piece in a car that makes a louder noise. The noise doesn't fix the thing that's wrong. Right? They say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, the squeaky man gets the attention, I guess, right? But nothing gets fixed. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I'm somebody who is far from perfect where this is concerned. I'm not somebody that sits here and never complains about anybody or never complains about anything. But I will say that I have a codified oppositional position to that type of behavior. And I catch myself doing it. And I probably do it less than most, admittedly, because I've been working on this for a while. But the whole thing is, it still has nothing to say about what I think I should be doing or shouldn't be doing. I'm building my decisions based on the outcomes that I observe those decisions lead to. If you act, you have an opinion on something, you want to do something, you go out and do it. Whether or not it was right or wrong is going to be determined, or I shouldn't say right or wrong, I should say effective, should be determined by the outcome and nothing else. Like, this is the final test. Did what you intended to do actually happen? And if not, it doesn't matter your intentions, your sacrifice, the pain or struggle that you endured doing it. It didn't fucking work. It didn't work. I have this sales letter, right? A video sales letter that I just recorded, and I have one of my sons editing it, right? So he'll be the one to edit it, and it's pretty cool. He's 16. He's pretty good at editing, and he's not used to working with dad yet, right? So he's experiencing some pressure, and he did a lot of work, and he just gave the first draft of the edited video sales letter, and I was hoping that it was going to be all right, and it was. But he spent, I don't know, 20 hours on this thing. Why? Because he's learning a lot as he's going. It's one thing to edit funny videos, another thing to edit a strategically designed video sales letter. But if it was completely off base, he would have had to do the whole thing over again. And it wouldn't have made any difference to me. There would be no consideration for the disappointment that he would have had and all that other time that he invested. Because to me, it took you 20 hours to learn how to do this next one better. That's the way I look at it. Because ultimately, it's just the outcomes. I can't tell you how many times, I make shirts, right? I sell shirts. I've designed shirts where I'm like, oh, this is the one. This is the one. I'm never going to have to work again because this shirt is so good. And then I put it out there, and I get like 3 sales, like 3 people buy shirts. I shouldn't even say that. It's usually 1 or 2 people buying 1 or 2 shirts, right? And it's because ultimately what I think is great, I need to understand the limitations of that. There are plenty of people who they don't like sales in business. They like doing what they do. They like making what they make. They like, whatever it is that they are the technician, the doer for or of. They love doing that. I don't want to do sales. I said, but here's the thing. You want people to give you fucking money. So if you just want to fix cars, go fix cars. People will bring their broken fucking cars to you all day long. Oh, but you want money for it. Well, if you want money for it, that means, you know what? You're going to have to explain things more than you may want to. You're going to have to persuade them that you're effective, even when you know you are, but you also know that they don't know that you are. These are the things that the real world requires of you. Your opinions of what they should be or shouldn't be is irrelevant. It's like hearing the young people talk about socialism or communism, and it's like, oh man, you crazy kids. You crazy kids. I had a girlfriend. I'm in my early 20s, and this is in the Bronx. Tough chick, loudmouth chick. And not with me, but everybody else. And she had this habit of cursing at drivers in traffic. She was like a road rager. She's this little woman, 5'2", 5'3". I'm not going to mention her weight. She could have stood to lose a couple pounds, but it doesn't matter. She starts cursing this guy out at a intersection in the Bronx. Guy cut her off, whatever, guy's working. He's in his work van. She's in her van. I think she was working too, but it doesn't matter. In order to get in front of her at the stoplight, he guns it a little bit to get in front of her. She's cursing him. She's beeping. She's giving him the finger, all these different things. This is a little woman. The guy got out of his car. He walked to her. And she, had, one of those faces, that he didn't say anything to her. He walked up to her. He told her to roll the window down. She actually rolled the window down. He punched her in her fucking face. He broke her fucking orbital bone. Knocked her out in her seat. Luckily, she had the wherewithal to put the car in park when he got out of the car and started walking over to her. But she thought she was going to have one of these arguments with this guy. This guy, my man, the bucket model, my man, his bucket runneth over. Like it was full and then some. And he just punched her right in the fucking face. And I remember she went to Jacoby Hospital. A friend called me. He was like, oh, she got punched in the face. And I'm like, well, what happened? She told the friend told me. I'm like, I fucking told her to shut the fuck up. Like, what the fuck did she think? Anyway, I go there, and she looks like she's in fucking Rocky 3. Her face is swollen. She's talking all fucking like Sly Stallone. It wasn't a good look. She didn't realize that what she did could lead to that outcome, because she wasn't following these laws. She didn't consider where she was, who the other guy was, what the outcome was that she was doing, what the motivation was for her acting like that. It was emotional. It was cathartic. Ultimately, she was having this big hissy fit over somebody being in front of her. It just made no sense. I get it. I learned how to drive in the Bronx. Like, I'm a little bit of a fucking maniac, more than I should be. Much improved, but I get it. But I'm also not a 5'2" midget woman. Not an effective action. The other guy, the guy that punched her in the face, on the other hand, like, my man had a plan. he got in front of her, punched her in the face, got in the car, drove away. They never caught him. Effective action. So you can sit here talking about right and wrong all day long. It doesn't fucking matter. Ultimately, it's what was the outcome? What was the outcome? And if it ain't working, then you can't sell it as something that works. As something that's effective. Just because you feel it's the right thing. Well, this is the right thing to do. Okay, no problem. I'm sure a lot of people throughout history have suffered the consequences of being morally right, but violently wrong. Right? Morally superior, realistically, and physically inferior. So I want to be the guy who's making the decisions. I want to be the guy who's determining the outcomes. So that list, I think, went off well. What do we got here? All right. Aaron's talking about. Are you still talking about that banner? Oh, okay. Yep. All right. I'm glad you figured it out. You're on Saxon Rights. I wrote a lesson for my meeting tonight for that. It's called Play the Whole Movie and 3 Rational Questions. It's about self-regulation. Right on. Right on. Because there are times where we have to just understand it's normal, it's expected that we have a system, a mechanism to react in the moment to things. But we also know that system probably is not in the same sort of side of the building as that part of us that actually can intellectually process something, right? If we're just reacting, like we're being animals, and whereas I do appreciate the drives that animals have, we also have the benefit of leveraging them in a direction that produces outcomes that are actually aligned with our mission. So whenever we could think rationally about something that has stimulated us to react impulsively, I think we're going to be better off for it. Jamie writes, one of my favorite questions to sell for others. And how did that work out for you? It's exactly right. It's exactly right. All right. So we went over that list pretty good. Appreciate you guys helping me out. If you guys aren't getting my emails, masterchimletter.com. Go there. You get a free program just for doing that. I'm always putting more stuff up. Follow me on Instagram, master_chim. The links are all in the description. So I'm not going to sit here and try and memorize them and chance fucking them up. But I'll be here next week. I appreciate you guys being here. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.